Hi, it's Caroline Labor from Personal Empowerment Academy, and I hope you're having a wonderful day. So today I want to talk to you about how financial trauma stops you from achieving your goals. Now, if you're wondering what a financial trauma is, I will explain that in a minute. But firstly, I just want to touch on who this is actually for, so who this applies to. And generally, if you've been stuck in your financial situation for a while, so maybe you've been unable to shift your level of savings and actually accumulate meaningful savings, maybe you've been stuck in debt, or maybe you've been unable to break through and achieve your income goals. So if you've been stuck in certain money patterns for a while, then it could be a sign that you've encountered financial trauma in the past. So usually when the same patterns, repeat themselves over and over again, there's a deeper root cause that may not be presenting itself on the surface. Now, in a lot of cases, your relationship with money is actually impacted by your early money paradigm. So really the way you grew up around money and what you experienced by observing adults around you, so particularly your family. But sometimes it can be that, it may not be that, it can be a combination of that and financial trauma. So financial trauma can actually have a compounding effect on your family paradigms around money as well. So let me explain what a financial trauma is. So a financial trauma is an event that usually occurred sometime in your past, and the actual event itself at the time may or may not have been emotionally traumatic. What is relevant about a financial trauma is the impact that it leaves on you. And so the impact of a financial trauma is really around the bottom line. So when you look at your finances today, and whether that's the state of your savings or any debt that you've got or your income and income earning potential, then it really makes you think back to that old event. And you might say something to yourself like, if only that hadn't happened, I would be so much further ahead. So it generally relates to something that has sort of left you scarred or wounded in a way. And you see your limitations today as being driven by that, like a pivotal moment in your past. And so some examples of financial trauma could be things around business failure. So, maybe you really put your heart and soul into a business idea, maybe invested a lot of money in it, and for whatever reason it didn't work out. It could also be an investment gone wrong. So again, maybe, you put something really meaningful into that, like your life savings. For some people, maybe their superannuation or 401k. And for whatever reason, that didn't turn out and has left you really scarred. The other type of event that can be a strong financial trauma for a lot of people is getting into debt for the first time. So this could be around maybe the first time that you got a credit card, and at the time it might have felt great because you might have felt like you were more liberated and you had the freedom to spend more, but you approached it with the mindset of being responsible. But for whatever reason, it may have gotten out of control. You may have spiraled into more and more debt, and that could have triggered a series of events that then kept you into debt. So it can be a number of things, but as I said, really the major thing around the financial trauma is that you look at a particular event as a trigger point, and you say to yourself, if that hadn't happened, then I'd be so much further ahead today. Actually, that just reminded me of something that one of my clients said to me a while ago. A financial trauma can actually also be a missed opportunity. So particularly around, I think, real estate, given property prices, depending on where you live. I know a lot of people feel burnt by missed opportunities where, had they purchased a property 10 years ago, 20 years ago, they think about how different life would have been or how much further ahead they would have been, particularly if there was a specific transaction that, you may have been about to pull the trigger on, and for whatever reason you thought, oh, no, I won't do it just now, the time's not right. And you now might look back on that opportunity or that missed opportunity with regret because you look at how things might have turned out differently if you'd gone for that. So that's another form of financial trauma. And so really the common theme here is that event had a really big impact on you at the time that is still showing up in your finances today. So it could be showing up in the exact level of your debt or your inability to save, or a ceiling that may be imposed on how much income you're able to earn. So the thing is, when if you think back to that event, and the intention of this video isn't for you to get upset about it, but it's just to try and identify whether there is a financial trauma there. And if there is, then quite often just thinking back to that memory can bring about quite painful memories. Hello David, great to see you on the video. Okay, so let's talk about how a financial trauma impacts you. So some of the ways that a financial trauma impacts you today is you might find yourself unable to reach your goals. So for different reasons and in different ways, you might bring about self-sabotage, where you might be working really hard and you've got all these great strategies and plans in place and you start to execute them, but every time you almost get there, something gets in the way to pull you back down, or you don't quite complete things. Maybe you don't fully follow up and you just sort of let lots of opportunities start to slip through your fingers. And this is, really around trauma around an income goal. So another way that it might impact you is through your inability to save. So, it could be that you do have money left over at the end of your pay cycle, but for whatever reason, you find ways to spend that money. So things come up that kind of grab your attention, or, you might even find that every time you have a pool of money left over, some crisis happens and you've got to dip into your emergency savings. And so the savings never end up sitting there. And for a lot of people, quite a painful form of financial trauma is just not being able to get out of debt. So it could be that ever since, you triggered a cycle of being in debt, that you found yourself just getting deeper and deeper into that debt and just unable to break out of it no matter what you do. And so I want to explain to you why financial trauma impacts you in this way. So you might be wondering why, some event from the past, why a bad business deal would mean that you're in debt today or that you can't save today. And so really it comes down to the fact that we store different kinds of energy in our nervous system. So, you can see this when you walk around and you interact with people. So some people come across as just naturally happy and joyous and full of energy. Other people might seem really low on energy. Other people are quite tense. So, yes, we have like our personalities and our character traits, but we also carry a certain energy with us, and that can be shifted and it can be changed, because we're certainly not, all born the way that we're walking around today, particularly if you are carrying negative energy. And so what happens is that we're wired to store certain types of energy. And when something is quite traumatic and it leaves an impact on you, if you don't know how to deal with that at the time, or subsequently how to clear that, then you end up just carrying that energy around with you. And when you carry really strong emotions, they need to find an outlet. So they've got to find a way to come out because they're always sort of flowing around within you. And so when we talk about financial trauma, there's really two dominant emotions that pop up, that then show up in our interactions with money. So those two emotions, the first one is sadness. So this is sort of what we call a loss-based financial trauma. And loss-based financial trauma is usually around, where you think back to the event and it just makes you feel quite sad. So you sort of think about what could have been. The whole thing might feel really unfair to you, and yeah, it just seems like, life is unfair because that thing happened. And that's, it's quite a low energy emotion, as opposed to anger, which, even though it's still intense and is negative, is quite a strongly fueled emotion. So when you have anger associated with a financial trauma, it can be in two forms. It can be anger at yourself. So it could be you looking back on the situation and saying, well, I was naive. I shouldn't have been so stupid. I should have known better. And you can feel quite angry about the way that, you carried yourself at the time. But you can also have anger at other people. So especially if it's around a business loss that involved other partners, or even investments where maybe somebody gave you advice that, didn't really pan out. So it's not really trying to pass on the responsibility. It's about identifying whether you do have anger that's directed at other people. And it could be that, you felt that you really trusted people and they didn't look out for you. Maybe they had just, their own interests at the top of their mind. So if you do have anger around financial trauma, then it's usually really strong, and just thinking about that past event can trigger that anger quite easily. And so the thing is, with an anger-based financial trauma, so that's really just the surface layer. So you've got to deal with the anger first, because once you clear that anger, what you end up finding is that beneath that is the loss and the sadness. So you have two layers to work through, as opposed to just the one layer if you've got a loss-based financial trauma. So the simple truth is that if you don't know how to clear these emotions out of your nervous system, then they continue to exist within you and they get triggered really easily, especially through your interactions with money, because these emotions need an outlet and they need a way to keep reappearing. And so, they will keep setting you back through the same patterns until you learn to deal with these emotions and to clear them. So, you may be wondering as a next thought, how do I actually clear loss-based or anger-based financial trauma if it's something that does resonate with you? So I'm actually going to deal with that in my next video. So I will talk about the different ways that you deal with the loss-based trauma and the anger-based trauma. So stay tuned for the next video. So if any of this did resonate with you, then please leave me a comment or send me a private message and I'll be more than happy to chat to you about it. But otherwise, have a think about whether you think this applies to you, especially if you have been stuck in a particular area of your money, and I can help you shift that. So leave me a comment below and I will see you in the next video where we'll talk about how you can deal with your loss-based or anger-based financial trauma. Thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next video.